Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is our third Jupyter Accessibility Workshop, right, Tony?
Yes. And if the first two were any indication, it will be another great event. I'm super looking forward to the talk today.
Yeah, no, that is very exciting. I know sometimes you want to leave time for people to file in. Are we doing that? Are we just getting started?
Well, how many folks do we have now over in Hopin?
You
Can't
have
see
to
that
look.
right now.
Yeah, I can't see it either, so.
But either way, yeah, let's give another 5 minutes. It's the weekend, so it's great. It's great for the folks that can be here, but we'll give a little grace to get started, I think.
Yeah. Did you have any? Whenever I do the screen share, I always think I must have like some kind of focus issue when I fully share my screen because like my keyboard doesn't want to switch slides anymore. Have you had anything weird like that happen to you lately? Because it makes me nervous every time I do this because I like the keyboard so much more than my mouse.
No. I never really had live demo problems with Google Slides before, except with two screens. When I've got multiple monitors, then the slides become a problem. But this slide is beautiful. I love the aesthetic that you've been keeping with all of these slides.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. They're fun.
Where'd the color system come from?
It's kind of experimenting. It's derivative, right, of Jupyter uses orange all the time. And so it's kind of something between like an off complementary, like primary set, right? The opposite of orange is blue. But then we do orange and blue a lot, and I always feel like it's kind of cold. So I brought in some yellow. That's basically it.
Oh, it definitely warmed up the room. That little bit of heat made everybody a little more comfortable. Thank you.
Yeah, I like warm colors, so I'm a little bit biased.
We have a captioner today. That's super exciting. It's the first time. Congratulations on sorting that out. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot to learn with that, but definitely learning. We'll be getting better at that. It's funny, I've been trying to write down what I learned, but I do that anyway for me, but I'm hoping to be able to share it with others because I was really surprised when I was looking for like kind of a captioning 101. I couldn't really find anything like, how do you find people? What do you ask for, right? Like, and I was like, wow, I can't find any help on this. Does everyone just secretly know? And I'm out of the loop, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Right. Well, and today, I guess it's probably a good time to get started because hopefully we got some notes to take as a group
Right.
and learn a little bit more about accessibility, inclusive design with Jupyter.
Right. Yeah. That sounds good to me. So I think you are starting with the recommendations, but welcome. This is Intro to Accessibility and Inclusive Design with Eric Bailey. Woohoo! I'm super excited to have you all here for our third event, 3 out of 4. So we're getting close to the end. I hope we have some returning people. Whether or not, though, completely happy to have you here. And there we go, there's the clicker. Before we get started, a few reminders, right? By attending this event, you're agreeing to follow the event code of conduct. If you've made it this far, you clicked a box at some point, just a reminder. This event is also recorded. It'll be posted publicly, only though the main speaker sessions. When we break out for discussions, don't worry about that. I don't think I can stop Hopin from recording, but we won't be posting that. So whatever this means for you, I like to make sure people know before they're being recorded. Cool. With that, I said welcome, but welcome again to Jupyter. Whether this is your first event orbiting the planet or, your 5 millionth, we're really happy to have you. We want people with all different skills here, and it's a big place, so there's definitely a spot for you here, and hopefully today will help you find that. Right, we're going to be talking a little bit more about what to do with Jupyter and what you can do otherwise, and Eric's going to be giving us great foundations of knowledge that we're currently lacking a lot in the community. But with that, there's a bit of a question I think sometimes people have asked me, why make Jupyter specifically accessible? Before Eric gets into a lot bigger talk with this, I want to give a bit of foundation around that, right? There's so many web apps out there. There's so many different tools. There's so many different things. why bother making, well, maybe not why bother. Why focus on making Jupyter accessible when there's a lot of other things out there in the world? So I've got a few answers for you. 1, Jupiter, the planet, is quite big. Wikipedia tells me its equatorial radius is 71,492 kilometers. So we aren't the planet, but Jupyter, the project, the software projects and community, is also quite big, right? This isn't just a tiny project, but like, how big is big? Because I can't measure our community in equatorial radius, It's about 10 million public notebooks big, right? That's the main document form we use. And keep in mind, these are the public ones on GitHub, definitely not all the notebooks in the world. And this is from Peter Parente's NB Estimate project. Links are in the notes document if that's been shared, so you can check that source. This number really, really surprised me. Similarly, though, we have thousands of contributors. Keeping this vague because it's difficult to track how people are contributing, and even more, there's so many different GitHub repos or places where we just have code being active, which is not even the only means of contributing. The Jupyter.org lists about 343 different GitHub repos there alone, and those are just the official ones, right? That's not considering what I consider, the community includes extensions, right? It includes when people are just working on it right outside of the code. But similarly, I couldn't find, reliable numbers on the number of users, which is perhaps one of our most important measurements to me. I leave the question marks here, though, because this brings up, some concerns for me. I brought you all these numbers about all these things people are producing, but who are we serving? And I particularly worry, how many people are we really excluding? That is a big question that we continue to have, right? Is who is writing these 10 million notebooks, public notebooks, and who is reading these 10 million public notebooks, or who is being expected to read them and they aren't able to because we aren't building a place where that is possible. So that's the end of my Jupyter is big part, but Jupyter is also home to many what? And I didn't even introduce myself, I'm realizing, but it's home to many, many programming languages, right? Including Python is still the most popular in notebooks from what I've heard, but if we make notebooks accessible, they are going to be accessible, to a lot of different languages. This is not just fixing it for one person. Similarly, this isn't fixing it for one field of study, right? Jupyter is home to many humanities and sciences. I've met journalists who use Jupyter. I've met physicists that use Jupyter. I've met people who have made art history flashcards in Jupyter, right? This is a tool that people are using in a lot of different ways. And it means that, right, making that accessible is we're not just, for example, we're not just helping journalists work in accessible spaces or make accessible things. We're helping people in a lot of different fields. And students, this is a personal one to me. Jupyter is used in education, and so Jupyter is home to a lot of students, particularly when there's expectations that people are able to do lessons or homework in this. And that's not always the case, right? I've met students who have said, this field wasn't for me because I got tired of fighting with, Jupyter tools that I had to do major workarounds, or maybe I couldn't get them to work at all. And some people manage those workarounds and do great, but I think if we are focusing on education in this case, because in many cases, that's the first step to a lot of other work. We're going to be ensuring accessibility a lot of steps further down the line, right? This is a barrier at a very foundational level. Finally, Jupyter is built on open standards. If you want a little bit more of a technical reason, a little less of these ethical reasons of why we should be worrying about this, Jupyter is already built right off so many open standards that when I started asking people for advice, they didn't fit on these slides, so we're just going to keep it vague. But we have a habit, right, of following practices that are done, right? We follow internationalization standards. We follow standards for how right to convert document types to one another. But what we don't do right now is really consider any accessibility-focused standard, right? WCAG may be one of the first ones that you think of, right? The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, international standards for web content, just like what Jupyter is. And we don't, though, use any other accessibility first standards, right? Like our interfaces could be building off a UI library that considers accessibility from the start, and we don't, for example. So that's my soapbox. And for now, I'm going to say, I've told you why I think we should do this. Quick highlights of what we are doing right now. A few things that have happened. We have had accessibility meetings for more than a year. That's been really awesome in coordinating community efforts, bringing new people into the community that I've never met on any project, and similarly helped us work on, WCAG-based audits of various projects with related issues and pull requests to make changes. We also have CZI Essential Open Source Software for Science grant right now. That has been really, really helpful in terms of supporting our volunteers with a steady, what do I want to say, contributions that can be like supported, right? The volunteers are super helpful and they have done so much, but it's a lot to ask of them to solve some of these big problems. So to be able to provide that support has been super helpful in our efforts so far. And yeah, I should probably, no, okay, I forgot my slides, great. We also, though, future goals that we have include adding automated tests, right? These are the kind of things in open source that we often rely on to kind of make a checkbox for reviewing PRs, like, okay, despite the limits of this, it'll be really helpful in starting that conversation. We also want to ensure the notebook file format is as accessible as can be. This file is used across projects that aren't even official Jupyter ones, right? And if that foundation isn't accessible, then it's a little bit difficult to build on top of that infrastructure. We also are working to update and improve documentation. Update it meaning when we make these accessibility changes, they need to be recorded, and improving meaning making the documentation itself more accessible when we're finding issues with that. Of course, one future goal that I didn't mention is that we want to get you more involved, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're excited to have you here. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, though. What I actually am going to do is pause because, Tony, I talked a lot. Do you have any thoughts, things you'd like to add?
I have nothing to add, except that was one of the best introductions to Jupyter that I've ever seen, and I've seen many of them. I think it would be really good to hear about the person who put together these slides and ran this.
I know.
So maybe now's a good time for you to introduce yourself, Isabella.
Yeah, I did that backwards. My fault. So yes, I am Isabella Presero Floyd. My pronouns are she, her. In terms of image description style things here, I am a Latino woman with a hair that looks like you dropped a poofy dog on my head, like just fluffy dog sitting on my head at all times, and wearing a big pink sweater today. Tony over here is, I don't know, I always say kind of my like partner in crime in Jupyter efforts, but yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Sure, that's great. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm a developer experience advocate at Quantsite, and I'm a distinguished Jupyter contributor. I don't do the alt text thing well, but I did spend 8 hours doing my hair while I was sleeping and consider the bed a comb. So good morning and good afternoon and good evening. I hope we have people distributed across the globe here.
Oh my gosh. Yes, thank you for that backwards intro, right? We're doing the like sales pitch thing. You start with the exciting stuff and tell the details later, I guess. Thank you for that. Okay. Well, in that case, I think we're ready to get excited for our speaker, or are we pausing first, Tony?
Well, to give some grace to our captioner, let's just take like 5 minutes or so. We'll get Eric on stage. We'll get ready, and we'll get into the talk, I think. Yeah?
Yeah, that works for me.
Unless there's any questions. Are there any questions in the chat or any questions from the audience, anything that folks need clarified? One last thing, Isabella, we forgot to share. Do we have a collaborative notes document, or
we do? I cannot access the link while sharing my screen, but I left it in a chat somewhere, or I can stop sharing and send it.
Well, when during the break, we'll send it
okay.
to folks. Cool. So in let's say at like 8:50 or at 53, 7 minutes before the hour, we'll get Eric on stage.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Let me get you those notes.
I'd appreciate that. Yeah, it'll probably be good to update some folks about some past content too. So if we could share some links in the chat as things are going, as we're waiting, that would be super nice. I love the intro so much.
Apparently, I loved it so much I went straight into it. So
it's fine to be excited. You should just assume that people know who you are at this point. Got you.
You said you also wanted links to past event content, and I put that in the private chat. Checking with our super cool person behind the curtain. Would you like me to share that in the main hop-in chat too?
Oh man, we never got a chance to introduce the super cool person behind the curtain, did we?
I don't know if the super cool person behind the curtain wants to be introduced.
Well, she's going to be sending messages in the chat. So Tanya's going to be sending y'all stuff and moderating the chat for us today while Eric's talking. So everybody, say hi to Tanya. Thank you for helping us. Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I think now's a good time to usher me off and bring Eric on. And Isabella and Eric can get going in another couple minutes. Bye. Thank you.
Oh, bye. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful transitions. Thank you. Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh yes, it's going really well, right? So much excitement already. So I'm excited at least because I have the absolute pleasure of having you here and getting to briefly introduce you. So yeah. For anyone who may not know, though, I'm hoping if you registered for this event, you are excited as me. This is Eric Bailey, overall superstar. It's a little bit hard for me to summarize everything that's been done, but inclusive design advocate, speaker, writer of extremely useful blog posts that Isabella at least uses for her work day to day, and general just like excitement, very like. I just admire the scale of like all the different things that I've seen him advocate for. Like it's not right. Just, oh, we're just doing design in perhaps the most traditional sense, or, oh, we're going to worry about development. I really admire his ability to work kind of cross where the lines are usually drawn on those fields. And so with no further ado and meandering from Isabella, I give you Eric Bailey. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, that's a heck of an intro. I'm just loud online, but I'll try to live up to that description. Yeah, just thank you to you and to Tony for having me here. It's an honor and a privilege, and I'm really excited to talk about accessibility and inclusive design. I did want to say that pop of yellow is Chef's Kiss, just really nice. I think that should be carried forward. And that you mentioned that you like keyboards for transitioning slides. I do as well. And guess what? That's accessibility. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. can we flick over to the slides? Is that being displayed?
Yeah, I can see your full screen.
Wonderful. And I'm going to pop open presenter view and fiddle around. Nope, that's the wrong one. I'm a professional. All right. Are my slides showing full screen now?
Yep, we just see the browser top.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to
Thank you.
fiddle with that.
Yeah, I understand.
So hello. Before we begin, I do kind of want to say the topics that I'll be discussing today do get into identity as well as kind of the structures of how we view and interact with the world, and that might challenge your worldviews, and that's okay. I kind of invite you to, if you hear something that kind of shakes you or makes you feel uncomfortable, to sit with it during the talk and think about why I might be bringing it up in this context. I also am striving to be better and be a good ally in the accessibility space. So if there's something I talk about that you take issue with, I also invite you to speak with me, kind of privately or publicly. I'm always trying to improve how I speak and how I write about accessibility, inclusive design, and disability. And I understand the community is not a monolith, and I want to learn from everyone's perspectives. So that's kind of the ground rules for this talk. A little bit about me. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a designer working on design systems at a company called Ad Hoc. I write for CSS Tricks and Smashing Magazine. I also help maintain the Accessibility Project, more on that in a bit. I contribute to the Mozilla Developer Network for accessibility-related content. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts, USA, so if you ever want to do an outdoor coffee and you're in the area, please hit me up. And I'm really stoked to be here. It's a lot of fun. So the Accessibility Project, which I mentioned, is a open source, community-driven effort to make digital accessibility easier. And I think there's a lot of spiritual connection between that and Project Jupyter, where it's open source from the get-go. It tries to provide resources for how to make accessible content, as well as providing mechanisms for people to feedback into the project itself to make it better for everyone. If you're not familiar with it, I invite you to check it out. In particular, it has a checklist that we're really proud of that takes a lot of the web content accessibility guidelines and breaks them down into candidly human readable ways to interpret them. I have also served as a freelance auditor for a company called Tenon, which does both automated accessibility integrations as well as manual audits. And I say this to say that, oftentimes individuals in the accessibility space are downplayed or looked at as not technical. And what I really am kind of hoping to communicate is I do have experience in this space, and when you perform an audit, that actually has legal consequences. So when you say something is accessible or inaccessible, you really need to come correct, because that has the ability to have impact on things like lawsuits. I'd also like to not really bury the lead here. I am not very good at notebook visualization, graphing kind of stuff here, but fortunately, I'm pretty plugged into the accessibility community, and I will be uncovering some resources for people who are far more accomplished and talented than me, and this is a link to a gist on GitHub with all the kind of URLs and concepts I'll be talking about in this talk. The URL is bit.ly/A11Y-project-Jupyter. That's A11Y Project Jupyter. The first is a post by Sarah L. Fossheim, an intro to designing accessible data visualizations. It's an excellent kind of crash course spoken in the language of people who do data viz. They are just an incredible writer, and I really encourage you to reach out to them and check out what they've been doing. Second is Chartability, which is a set of heuristics developed by Frank Elvasky, who is just a powerhouse in this space. And I understand you had them come speak before me. So hopefully this is not too much of a surprise. Just want to kind of reiterate, this is a really good North Star for like figuring out yes or no, maybe what I'm doing is accessible or not. Another interesting thing I just came across is the MIT Digital Humanities Lab's sonification toolkit, which is work done to kind of convert digital things, often used in a charting context, data viz context, into audio tones, which is a great way to kind of communicate meaning if you, for example, cannot see the screen. The other thing, another frank, hit is a good list of data viz accessibility resources. It's a lot like those awesome, blank lists you might have seen if you're on GitHub a lot, which kind of breaks down, here's some good stuff and specific little niche things that are worth checking out if you kind of want to hit it up and go through all the links that they point out to. So, okay, with that covered, I now ask you, what is accessibility? And we're going to unpack this a little bit. First off, accessibility is a civil right in the United States. Many other countries also have similar protections. And in this slide is a photo of the Capitol crawl, where disability advocates abandoned their mobility devices to overcome the steps to get to the Capitol in protest of basically failing to recognize their status as disabled individuals and accommodations for them in society. It is a very iconic photo in disability spaces. If this is your first time seeing it, know that the more you kind of explore this space, the more this will come up. And when I say civil right, I do want to communicate the gravity of that phrase, by which I mean this is a level of protection that is equivalent to not being discriminated against for the color of your skin or the religion that you practice. So when you mentally think about this construct, put it at that level of significance. So, what is accessibility? It is the design of products, devices, services, or environments for disabled people. That's a very deliberate statement, by which I mean you figure out what somebody's accommodation needs are, and you either proactively or retroactively change what you're working on to accommodate their access needs. I'm camp proactive, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. You might also see the word accessibility shortened down into a neuronym, A11Y. That represents the 11 characters between A and Y, shortened down to this. I don't like to use this in kind of a public context, but when I am talking shop, it's a very convenient and easy to use abbreviation. It also makes for an excellent hashtag that helps to disambiguate the difference between accessible by way of approachable or accessible by way of access in a public context, like a library provides access to content if you do not have a lot of money. This speaks to digital accessibility, which is helping people with access needs use digital content the way that they would like to. So how do we do this? What do we do? Well, there's four major kind of philosophical tent poles to an accessible experience. The first being perceivable. And perceivable is an interesting one because, there's a lot of cultural considerations as well as physiological and environmental considerations around how people see things. The most obvious one that comes to mind is color contrast, which is if a value is too light against the background it is placed on, there is a chance that individuals with low vision, either biological or environmental, for example, cataracts or the harsh glare of the overhead sun at noon, won't be able to read your content. And if they can't read your content, they can't know your content or take action on it. And that is an access barrier. Operable is the ability to take the content and manipulate it. So a great example here is typing text into an input field or updating a filter to redisplay data. And most of us use the mouse and the keyboard to do this. But my question back to you is, what if you can't use your hands? How do you do that? Accessibility helps us with this. Understandable is my personal favorite because I like UX design. And understandable is the ability to know what you're doing. You know, people are quick to jump to blindness when they think of accessibility on the web. But the most prevalent disability condition in the world, the WHO did a study on this, is depression. And depression is something that actually affects your ability to process and understand information. And that's wild. You know, that's one of those things that kind of blew my mind when I read it. And, you know, it also impacts things like multitasking, which is something a lot of us do with computer jobs, especially now that we're quarantined and it's hard to unplug. Robust is the fourth of the 10 poles. And robust is making sure something works in different contexts. It's why you can read a news article and click that little read more button and, reader mode button, and the content shows up in a slightly different way. It's why you can rotate your device and the content will adapt to redisplay to that. It's a fun one. I like it a lot. You might also be familiar with the term inclusive design. Inclusive design is a part of accessibility, but accessibility isn't always necessarily a part of inclusive design. By which I mean inclusive design is an approach to creating accessible experiences, whereas accessibility sometimes is only concerned with remediation, which is repairing access barriers that have been created. Inclusive design asks us to kind of probe the context in which we live in society. You know, a big question it asks is, do you have a disability? And if this was an in-person talk, the party trick I like to use is, you know, do you wear glasses? You know, congratulations, you either are, you know, farsighted or nearsighted, and you have an assistive device that you use to help you navigate the world. That's a disability. That's just been normalized in society to the point where we don't really question it. A way of looking at disability is a mismatch between an individual and their environment. And this speaks to the social model versus the medical model of disabilities. The medical model kind of thinks about disability as a problem to be solved, whereas the social model thinks about it as a way of experiencing the environment. And by this, I mean, you know, when we build a building with stairs, why are we building stairs? You can build an access ramp to help people with mobility devices enter into a building, or we question why we build stairs at all, and why don't we default to ramps? It's pretty provoking stuff, in my opinion. So again, you know, what it's all about is taking these kind of artificial divided categories we place on things, questioning their roots, and recontextualizing them. And I think that's pretty neat. A little bit of a history lesson too. Inclusive design is often kind of thought of as like kumbaya hippy dippy design practice, and there are definitely aspects to that, but it's an old idea. One of the first kind of events that led to inclusive design thinking actually throws back to World War II, when we were taking teenagers and putting them into airplanes and having them go fight our wars for us, which kind of sucks, but that is what happened. And the military doesn't really care about feelings, it cares about outcomes. And one of the things it was grappling with is that the cockpits, and specifically the seats that the pilots were sitting in, were not helping their pilots fly planes. And so they're like, okay, we need to redesign our cockpits because when pilots fly planes bad, they crash. Crashing costs money and resources, and we might lose the war because of it. So they put a lot of time and money into this. And the first approach to fixing this was they measured like thousands of soldiers and took like exacting measurements of their bodies and figured that they could average it out and build something that worked for this kind of abstract model of what the average person is. And it was a failure. It was a colossal failure. Nobody liked it. And what they figured out is you can put straps and buckles and little adjusters so that a pilot entering into a cockpit, sitting down and strapping in, can actually move things around to make it comfortable for them. And that was wildly successful. And I think that's a really interesting thing because it's a really good mindset about how to think about how you interact with digital experiences. I mentioned buildings earlier. Inclusive design is kind of a sister to universal design, which is an architectural practice. When you build a structure, how do you ensure that access is carried through? Unlike software, buildings don't really get to get critical hotfixes in the way we kind of understand them. You kind of get one chance to build a building, so it's important to do it right. The other kind of thought here is that buildings are changing now that the internet is getting industrialized, by which I mean buildings supply functions, and those functions are starting to show up in a digital context instead. And that's really important in that I used to potentially have to go to a building to access a government form, and now instead there's a website that does that. If I can't access that website, I can't get that form, and I can't participate in the society that I exist in the country's politics that I exist in. The other thing is inclusive design is intersectional. Intersectionality is a concept invented by a Black feminist scholar named Kimberly Williams Crenshaw in 1989. And it asks us to probe your sense of identity, the idea that you kind of contain multitudes and that it's hard to analyze somebody from just one single context. A good way to think about this is how was the place that you were born into, the family that you were born into, the context that you kind of contemporarily live in currently, how do those all help to shape your identities? How do you behave in a professional context? How do you behave with friends? How do you, your hobbies, your religious beliefs, all these things kind of compound to make you as a person. And you need to accommodate that if you're really kind of trying to speak about how people exist in the world and quantify it. So, we kind of have a good background now of accessibility and inclusive design. And you're like, okay, no, seriously, how do we do this? These are the inclusive design guidelines, and I really like them a lot. The first one is to provide a comparable experience. And that's basically people can accomplish what they want without undermining the quality of the content. But a good example of this is a image alternate text. So I could see an image, or if I cannot see an image, I have alt text that describes the image accurately and concisely, and I still understand the reason that image was placed on the on the screen in the first place. Consider situation. People do different things in different ways, and you want to kind of map your experience back to how they're going to do their thing. And a really good example of this is being able to rotate your iPad to a landscape format, because there are circumstances where you might have motor control disabilities that are so severe that you need this device mounted to your wheelchair at all times in this orientation in order to navigate the world. Be consistent. A good example here is it's kind of wild that you can click on links on one website and then go to another website and click on links, and they both do the same thing, even though they look a little different. And the reason for that is external consistency, which is things that look like the things that they represent behave across different experiences, regardless of if you control them or not. So you want to borrow those affordances. Check marks should have their little check symbol and not like a picture of Donald Duck when they're activated. Give control. This speaks to agency. This is another one I really like. I mentioned reader mode before. You go to a news website to read an article, the type is way too small. There's auto-playing video, and that distracts you. And I don't know, maybe the color contrast is too low, but what you can do is press that little reader mode button and pull up a screen that gives you the ability to modify the type, the line spacing, the column widths, strip away distractions, and consume the content in a way that works for you. I'm going to pause here for a drink. Then offer choice. Again, people do different things in different ways. And, when we start to fall off the beaten path of usability, you want to give them multiple ways to go about doing a thing. A good way to think about this one is your email client's ability to bulk edit email. So you can swipe through each email and delete it. That kind of stinks, especially if you have muscle fatigue and you have 1,000 emails you got to get through. You can crack open a bulk edit mode where you select each email and then apply one delete action. You could also even write a filter that targets like a consistent phrase across that email and delete all of them in one fell swoop. And then, prioritizing content, again, seems kind of obvious, but it is definitely worth stating. Make the main thing of the thing you're looking at the most obvious thing. Make it clear and simple to understand. And finally, we have add value, which is consider why you're making the things that you're making and how does that improve the experience for the people that are using your content. This is a kind of weird one to wrap your head around. So a really cool example that I love is you can turn on VoiceOver, the screen reader on your iPhone, and you can swipe and tap and swipe and tap to activate the camera, to flip it around so it's looking at you. iOS actually has the ability to announce when it thinks it's looking at your face and tell you that you can take a picture now. So you can take a selfie even if you can't see the screen. But that's a lot of work. Add value teaches us that you can also tell Siri, hey, take a selfie. And it turns on the camera, flips it around, and takes a shot. That's cool. That's really cool. And that's thinking about the value of the features you add and how they are accessed. So now let's talk about vinegar and honey. There are kind of two ways to think about accessibility. I'm team honey, but we do need to understand vinegar. People sue for access issues, and they're very right to do it. Again, this is a civil right. The inability to access digital material represents exclusion, and we need to acknowledge that and internalize it. I'd also like to say that now private organizations can and are getting rightly having lawsuits filed against them for access issues because, as I mentioned earlier, more and more services that are integral to living everyday life are going online. And it's important that we as a population are able to do that regardless of our circumstances or abilities. On the honey end of things, a study was conducted and found that a failure to accommodate disability represents a potential $490 billion in revenue. That's amongst disabled working age adults in the United States. And that's billion with a B. This kind of shook me the first time I read it. But I do want to remind you of kind of the bias that you make when you think about disability immediately going to a blind person and a screen reader. When you take a holistic look at disability, that includes, people with anxiety, people with depression, people with ADHD, which is distributed across our population a little bit more than I think you think it is. The other cool thing on Team Honey is a lot of technology that is normalized in our everyday lives actually is born of assistive tech. So the keyboard that you use to register for this event and the one that you use every day to do your job, this is its great grandfather. This is the Hanson writing ball, which was used in a school for deaf mutes way back when. And this eventually turned into that thing that's slapped on the bottom of your laptop right now. So, again, how do we do this? Cool. Yep. A lot of theory. Now we're going to talk about approach a little bit. First off, I want to say do not use accessibility overlays. This is a recent development in accessibility circles, and they are products that promise to, air quote, fix access issues on your website automatically by way of, again, quote, automated AI-driven solutions. It's honestly, most of these things are teetering piles of ableist assumptions and mapped back to if statements. And there are many cases of these overlay vendors getting sued for not delivering what they promise. There is a website, overlayfactsheet.com, that gives you a lot more context for this. But it's a really predatory marketing practice. And basically, these companies are profiting off of a scaremongering tactic of disability-threatening lawsuits. It's really gross. It's really slimy. It's really predatory. I don't like them. And if you have one currently on your site, I advise you to remove it and write out the rest of your contract and do not renew. The real power of creating an accessible experience starts, in my opinion, as a designer in the prototyping phase. To that point, I'd like to talk a little bit about shift-left methodology, which is when you have an idea, you then commit to spending time and energy and materials and resources to create a solution, in this case, a product. And if you don't consider accessibility from the beginning, where accessibility kind of factors in is after you release and somebody kind of uncovers this issue, and now you need to kind of tackle the entire experience as a whole, kind of pouring over it and figuring out where access barriers are present. Shift-left methodology encourages us to take that and have inclusive design considerations as early as possible in your development process. So, if you are proposing a feature, how does that feature map back to assistive technologies? How does that map back to different kinds of ways of experiencing the world? Who's present in the room? Who isn't present in the room and why? And what are you doing about it? That saves a lot of time and effort down the line and is one of my favorite ways to go about doing things. And to that point, it's okay to acknowledge that you live in a bubble, as long as you're cool with the idea that you do know that you are there. So I encourage you to test your ideas early and often with a diverse range of people and backgrounds. Within that, people with self-reported disabilities. And then to keep testing after launch. A lot of people kind of do one test and then check it off and assume it's good forever. And the real truth is experiences grow and change and evolve. And it's good to kind of keep testing your underlying assumptions to make sure that they still continue to work. To that point, I'd like to talk about another World War II thing that is an inclusive design thing, strangely, and that's survival bias. And here, again, we're going to the Air Force. Planes were going out and getting shot up and, either crashing or coming back. And again, the Army or the military doesn't really care about soldiers per se. It cares about survivability, and it cares about the ability to keep its planes operational for as long as possible, both in the combat theater and also just in terms of having planes to maintain military superiority. So when planes were going out and coming back riddled with bullet holes, they're like, this is a problem. How do we stop these bullet holes from showing up so our planes stay in the air longer? And first they thought, we'll just slap a bunch of armor on where the bullet holes are because, that's where the shots are landing, so we should reinforce them. And the surviving plane count didn't go down. And the point of survival bias is you're only seeing the planes that made it back. So they reconfigured their armoring to place the armor on places where bullet holes were not present. And that actually increased the survivalhood of the planes that they deployed. So how this translates to a digital context is you are only seeing the people that manage to make it through. By which I mean who is present on the web and why, how are they able to get there, how are people not able to get there, who is present in Project Jupyter, how are they able to get there, who isn't present, why weren't they able to get there, And then who's present in this presentation? We're, people who use assistive technology able to successfully operate the sign-in buttons and navigate to be here today. I'm not sure. Another thing from a design context that I think is valuable, even in a data viz, is what the heck is a persona? People are complicated. People want things. And I think by attacking your problems and like the kind of questions you want to answer with visualizations, it's not necessarily like who you're catering to as a person. It's what do they want? And then kind of breaking that apart instead of creating kind of a hypothetical omni person that is, really into whatever you're trying to sell them. And a good way to think about this kind of criticism of the persona theory is these are attributes shared by Prince Philip and Ozzy Osbourne. They're both male. They're both 70 years old. They're both English. They both have children. They're both wealthy and married and remarried. They both own real estate. They both like to take vacations in the Alps, listen to music, and they both like dogs. Huh. I'd also like to talk about the limits of empathy. Empathy is a term that you will hear thrown around in inclusive design spaces. And this is kind of a tough one to unpack. So the go-to story I have for this is the experiences in 1956 of Nyari Morgan, who was an Aboriginal elder who was out in Australia patrolling his territory. And his first experience with modern white Western culture was an atomic bomb test detonation. And his first contact with Western white civilization was 7 years later. And this is a stress test, I think, for the concept of empathy, because there is realistically no way for us as kind of contemporary computer using individuals to understand the sheer totality of experience of seeing an atomic bomb detonation without the context of, honestly, modern warfare and the need for an atomic bomb. And so that's the extreme version, but what this is kind of getting at in a contemporary context is being cognizant of lived experiences and how they are different from your own. So instead of empathy, I encourage sympathy, which is knowing that you don't know the totality of somebody else's experience, but being able to do something about it, by which I mean you can turn on a screen reader. You can use it to kind of navigate, read a few articles about the basic interaction modes. But you can also turn it off when you're done, and you can see the screen when you're using it. And that's not always reflective of the realities of a disabled individual who relies on it all day, every day, and has potentially been blind since birth and has a completely different way about going about things. The slide here is for a company called Fable. I'm a really big fan of them because they do usability testing by way of disabled individuals who are daily assistive technology users. So, something that you think is technically accessible, there's really a usability angle to this as well, which is, does it make sense? Is it pleasant and easy to use? If it's not, how do you quantify that? And they really help you with that. And again, okay, you are now shaking your fist and screaming at the sky, how do we do this? I need code. And I say to you, I am not going to give you code because I do not know how to write notebooks. But I can point you towards resources, and hopefully some of them in the slide notes will help with that. When you're approaching design and the design facing kind of objectives of development, one of the most important things you can do is to use plain language, use simple concepts. This helps for a general public audience, but it also helps for people that are really, industry insiders who know all the jargon and know all the kind of inside baseball. It helps them too because it's less mental work that they have to do. And we've actually quantified this. It's called the task load index. And it basically speaks to the harder something it is to understand, the more work that you have to do, and the more it impairs your cognition for kind of understanding what you're being shown. So, when you do have these fancy infographics that are just gigantic and very impressive with lots of nodes flying around everywhere, what does that mean? Why are you communicating it that way? Can you break it down into something that's more simple to understand? Can you have that whiz-bang, fancy state as something that you can enable? Is it really necessary for the point you're trying to get across? You can also refine your user experience. So does your information architecture make sense? How you encounter information on the screen, your flows to get there, does that make sense? Does it feel rocky? Kind of, do you open the door to get into this really nice restaurant? And is the experience like a wonderful segue to sitting at a nicely set table? Or does somebody kind of come sneak behind you, kick you in your rear, and like suddenly you're thrown out into the streets? Heading levels are really important. They help to provide an overall context of what's on this page and why. It's important to use them. A logical page structure that places the main content first. Don't bury the lead. Don't beat around the bush. Just come out and say what you're trying to say. Use generous negative space to set elements apart from each other. Understand this helps especially low vision individuals understand the boundaries of stuff. So what is connected to what and what is deliberately not connected to what. Focus indicators, another thing I'm really big on. If you can't use a mouse, you need to be able to see what is currently selected so you can take action on it. And in order to do that, you need a nice, loud, bright focus indicator to be like, this is the thing that you're on right now. The other thing is just place important actions higher up. Don't bury the lead. What am I here for? How can I do it real quick? Great, cool, I'm on my way. I am not fighting the interface. I feel great about it. Typography is also often overlooked in accessibility and inclusive design. Get a good font. Make sure that it has the ability to support multiple languages. People might be translating your content without you knowing, or you providing a mechanism for that. Does your font have glyphs to support that? Also, restrict the number of fonts that you use. There is a correlation between income and disability, which means that there's probably a good chance that somebody might be on a feature phone, and with a feature phone, speaking in generalizations, comes a data plan. If you're loading 12 fonts, why are you loading 12 fonts? That might be eating away into somebody's experience on or ability to access the web for the sake of vanity, which isn't great. Limit your type treatments. You can do a lot with type, but you want to keep it consistent and predictable. This helps people understand kind of the different kinds of content that you have and make correlations between like, oh, these are heading treatments, this is body copy treatment. I get it. I know how this works now. Don't underline non-link content, and conversely, just underline your links. It's fine. Nobody cares about your sense of aesthetics. Underlines equal links. Just keep it going. It's great. And then when you make type size adjustments, make them predictable. In a web context, I like the ability for a browser to use Command or Control plus and minus to do this, because it handles that for you. But if you do have text size adjusting widgets, don't make it jump weirdly. So pick a ratio and stick to that so people can kind of understand as the type size increases where the content is going and why. Color. Color, I think, is pretty important with data viz. The most important one here is, watch out for those lighter values, because if I can't see it, I don't know what's going on. I can't use it. A fast follow behind that is don't rely on color alone to convey meaning. So using patterns, using textures, using text labels. If I physiologically can't see red, I am not going to know what you're trying to say with a red value. But if you slap a little icon and text label next to it that says like invalid input, aha, now I know that I have done something bad and I need to do something about it. The other flip on that is color also has cultural connotations. So, for example, the Chinese stock market uses red to indicate good and green to indicate bad. So, being aware of the audience you're serving and why is helpful. More in the immediate. If you have a complicated background, say a hero photo, don't place text over it, or if you do, give it a solid color background to help differentiate the difference between the background and the foreground. And this is especially important for individuals with low vision. And then a limited color palette. Like, we have literally millions of crayons to pick from, but if you stick with a restrained set of colors, that helps on the cognitive aspect to understand that, like, okay, blue means things I can click on to do stuff. Red means things that are bad. Gray means it's static text that I can read, that kind of thing. Forms and input. Every input needs a label that provides an instruction that a assistive technology can hook into to operate it. When you have required fields, mark them as obvious. Ideally, you don't have any optional fields, because if you're asking people to do stuff, you're asking them to expend time and effort. Don't use jargon for your error messages and states. Make it really easy to understand where things have broken and why, and what you can do about it. Group things that are related that you ask into sections. If you do long form tasks, consider dividing those as well. So handling kind of one big concept per page, that really helps people understand kind of how much they need to do and how much is remaining. The other thing is, especially for motor control issues, like, don't ask for redundant info. If you know somebody's name, capture that. If you need to ask them for it again, you don't, because you already have it. Don't make them expend the effort to type it in again. When you submit content, put it at the end. Make it very obvious. You don't want people submitting half-filled form information or failing to understand the kind of the totality of the ask that you're giving them. Also, some assistive technology can slice up the page and interact with different kinds of content in different ways. So placing it last kind of communicates that all the stuff before it is required, even if they haven't necessarily seen it yet. Your media. So complicated interactions can usually be broken down into more atomic bits, which are easier to quantify and create accessible labels for. For media, ensure that you can access it in multiple ways. Captions being a great example of this for live or recorded content. Shout out to our captioner who is providing that right now. Don't autoplay animations and provide a pause button. Vestibular conditions represent an area here where your autoplaying animation might be severe enough to give them a negative experience, including migraines, vomiting, discomfort. And that's all just for the sheer curiosity of trying to use the thing you made. That's not a great experience for them. And then also make sure that everything is visible if you zoom your page up to 400%, and that will accommodate people who rely on screen magnification, who can keep on trucking and do what they came here to do. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Hopefully this was helpful to y'all. You can check out the resources that I provided at bit.ly/A11Y-PROJECT-JUPYTER. My website is ericwbailey.design. My email address is eric.bailey@gmail.com. And you can find me on Twitter and other social media spaces at Eric W. Bailey. If you have any questions about the content that I've covered here today, I would be more than happy to answer them. And if you would like kind of some help getting introduced to where to kind of start first with accessibility efforts, I would be thrilled to help point you in the right direction. So with that, thank you again. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak with y'all today.
Hello. Okay, yeah, I'm back. Thank you so much for that talk.
Oh, that was so cool.
Tony, I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Okay. Anyway, Yes, that was so exciting. I know I appreciate you with the start saying, right, I don't have as much notebook experience, but I don't want you to underestimate the importance of bringing us information that we really lack in our community. So
Yeah, I'm not smart enough for Jupyter.
I wouldn't say it's a matter of smart at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I can speak personally. I do not have the confidence that what am I trying to say? That many of the people that I work with in notebook spaces have skill with that. So I probably don't have quite the same experience, but very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few journalism jobs, and you know, it like I'm not unfamiliar with the like it's very actively used in the journalism like data visualization space. So like it's cool to kind of connect those. I was like, I'm going to talk for them, and they're like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, no, it's I was just so excited and thank you for your flexibility of scheduling. Tony, you were saying something though. Why don't you go ahead?
I don't remember what I was saying. I hope my audio is working again.
Yeah.
But that was a super cool talk. It's not about so much being smart, but it's like the stories we have to communicate, right? And like for me as a neurodiverse person, like the notebook's been an amazing opportunity for me to enhance my cognitive thinking skills and communicate where my needs lack, right? But like what you communicated to us today was just like fabulous, and all this advocacy work is, you know, very important. So, you know, it all goes hand in hand. You know, we're all fighting in the same direction here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do think that like, you know, I'm not anti-data viz. Like, there are complicated, very complicated concepts, you know, that sometimes an infographic or data viz is the right choice. And like that's ties directly in my mind to cognitive accessibility concerns, which is just like, here is this complex, multifaceted thing with all these kind of contributing sources to feed into it. And like, how do you arrange that information in a way that tells a compelling narrative? And like, you know, I could write 5,000 words and maybe do it, or here's one graphic, like, ta-da.
But increasingly, the challenge is actually that you have to use both of them together, right? Because like they're incomplete. And, you know, when we talk with Frank and you start thinking about the whole document as one story, right? We spent a lot of time thinking about a visualization at a time, but now they're so cooperative that, you know, it increases the complexity. And some of the questions that we find ourselves asking in our accessibility work: is Jupyter a normal web application? You know, to what extent do some of the principles actually apply because we have so many affordances within the system itself?
Yeah, I mean, I have a spicy quote for you if you want.
Yes, please.
The web content accessibility guidelines are the floor and not the ceiling. And I think you just caught on to that exactly, which is like they are geared mostly for traditional document-based web experience. And they're really good at kind of dissecting that. But like, you know, what Frank and y'all are exploring is, in my mind, kind of uncharted territory. And like, it's great that you're kind of questioning the boundaries of this.
Honestly, it is nice to hear you say that though, because sometimes I'm just wondering if I'm not searching in the right places for resources and I'm missing it. So yeah. But there's a lot we can, I think, though, draw from that floor has been the case. Like a lot of the time, we still are looking for the same experiences that they're advocating for in terms of like, right? We don't, like you were saying, we don't want to make people sick. We want to make sure people can actually navigate. It's just a matter of how with these infrastructures and like what is actually a good experience here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also like an opportunity here where like, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, I feel, but like it is an opportunity to lead by example. It is uncharted territory, and like the contributions you can make back, you know, not only help everyone, but also help reinforce your authority in this space. And the other thing that is like very interesting to me about accessibility in a very nerdy way is when you create programmatically determinable semantic meaning, your information is now quantifiable. And like, you know, guess what technology likes is bits of things that it understands that you can do stuff to, like machine learning, that, you know, kind of a one-to-one transference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have, you know, in Jupyter, there's this very interesting challenge where we can only be so accessible. Since we have extensions and anybody can put whatever they want in our documents, like we only get to control what happens in the corridors of the building, right? And like, I was really interested in the way that you talked about architecture earlier, and almost how this accessibility stuff becomes like a non-material architecture. But even in software, like to that point where you're like, hey, you know, you don't get to hot fix a building. Like if you have a very big piece of software and accessibility wasn't considered at the fore and the code base is grown, then you're very challenged, right? Like it's the best advice we've seen is start over. And it's like, that's not tenable at this point, right?
Yeah. I didn't have it on the talk, but this is another thing I'm trying to work through, which is like, there's one of two ways you can kind of realistically, as a digital person who makes stuff, encounter accessibility. One is like a positive experience like this, hopefully a positive, or a negative experience like a lawsuit. And again, like people are right to sue, not questioning that, but it sucks. It really sucks because you're getting dinged for something you hypothetically haven't known about before, for something that you've probably put a lot of effort in, and like that just really leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. And if you're looking for something to do about that, Lainey Feingold, who is a lawyer, wrote a book called Structured Negotiation, and I love it because it, instead of taking an adversarial approach with a lawsuit, works with these large organizations and institutions to figure out like, how can we both work together without needing to bring the lawsuit hammer down. And I love that it completely recontextualizes the conversation away from us versus them to how can we collaboratively get what we need. And like, these are for large, like international conglomerate brands and not like, you know, mom and pop shops. So it's like, it's an effective strategy, and I'm a really big fan of it.
It hits super close for Jupyter, right? Because it's becoming such a driver in the education sector, right? Like as millions and millions of people start using these things, we exclude more people, and there are legal ramifications for this. But not only that, it's being used in all the countries, right? So yeah, we are an international organization at this point with, you know, international effect, but yeah, it's a big problem, big challenge.
Yeah. The other thing is like, and like, I definitely struggle with this. So like, you can't fix everything all at once. Like if you're in the accessibility game, like I hope you like delayed gratification, because it's kind of clean as you go, lots of little positive change, you know, in the things that you make, but also the cultures that you participate in. And like, you can't, air quote, fix it all at once, nor necessarily is fixing the right way to think about it, but also, you know, like what can you do while you're in the moment so that you don't have to go back after you push it up to have to go back and fix it, air quote, fix it.
No, and that's definitely, I completely agree. And getting that, that's something we've been working with, is how we're getting the, right, like how do we get the culture of these contributions to start happening? Because that's something with open source that I haven't found a ton of resources specifically on, like negotiating that with an open source community. I have a lot of conversations with people that are like, you require developers to do it. And I was like, I can't require anyone to do anything really. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's a good point. But
yeah, well, I mean, like, I'm sorry, Tony.
Oh no, after you, you're the guest.
Nope, too bad.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, so one of the things that I've noticed, like going into the we're trying to meet the community and, you know, grow our efforts and go to folks. But there's a big dislike for automated testing, and I appreciate that. But open source, we have a hard time with getting manual testing. We're going to get it there eventually. But the automated testing stuff needs to be improved so we can codify our accessibility practices. It almost seems like the only way to get accessibility into our open source processes is for the manual testing. Just, we got to build the floor almost, and hopefully complement the manual testing later on. But
yeah, and like I do want to say I love automated testing. Yeah, Tanya said the stick and the carrot. That's in the chat. That's really, yeah. Yeah, like automated testing is wonderful for a few reasons, but also it covers only, like, very general terms, 30% of access issues. But guess what? When you hire somebody to do auditing, you know what they don't want to do? That 30% time on things that could have been programmatically addressed and fixed. And that respects their time as an individual, which I like. The other thing is I love CI/CD checks because it helps to normalize thinking about accessibility as a code quality concern and not as a separate accessibility concern. So, if the robot is yelling at you that your code is bad, like, developers already know and understand this, and they're working towards a pre-agreed standard. And it also is a robot and not a person going, well, did you do this? Because that is not a good way to make friends. And it puts an accessibility person in the unfortunate position of being the fun police when all they're trying to do is preserve access.
Yeah. Can I say, I think we only have a few minutes before we're going to transition to breakout rooms, but we do have one question from the chat I'd like to bring up. So quoting Mars Lee, she said, you put a strong emphasis on civil rights in lawsuits. Do you feel like there's a difference in how a client from a government or education differs from a client from a private company? Do you think, in a way, governments, quote, think left more so because of the potential lawsuit? Does more vinegar work out? Yeah.
That's a really good question.
It's a big question, all right.
Yeah. So there's a landmark case. It is a blind individual who sued Domino's Pizza for the inability to order a pizza using their app. And it was ruled in the Supreme Court that this was a violation of his civil rights, and people don't know the web content and accessibility guidelines. They know they can't use something. And was this person right to sue because he couldn't get pizza from a private organization? Yes, because this organization is larger than a government. Like, you can order pizza from Domino's in foreign countries. And if you can't get pizza just by, accident of birth or circumstance, like, that is discrimination. And so I like to lead with honey because I like people feeling excited and empowered to affect change in a positive way. But I think it's really important to understand that all of this positive messaging stems from exclusion, it stems from discrimination, it stems from societal bias, and sometimes you do need to communicate that. And there are certain people in this world who will not be placated by pleas to doing good, unfortunately. And so those are times when you do need to remind them that, this is discrimination the same way, firing somebody for being Muslim would be discrimination. And the government's role, the interesting thing to say here is they are more cognizant of Section 508 in particular, which is a government kind of edict to do an accessibility. But the sad and sorry truth is a lot of government services, particularly smaller governments, so cities and towns, aren't accessible on the web. And that really stinks, and it breaks my heart because especially while we're all quarantined, if I can't renew my driver's license online, I have to go into a building to do it. Does that building have the access requirements I need to get in there? And while I'm sitting there marinating in everyone else's breath, and I'm immunocompromised because I'm disabled, that makes me have to do a risk assessment for my driver's license, which is my ability to go out into the world versus dying. And so that's why these laws exist in my mind.
Yeah. I like when you answer these questions. You do a good job giving concrete examples, and this is no exception. So thank you.
I hope I answered it.
I mean, I don't know if it's an answerable. Maybe that's the reading into it in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I do, if it's okay, want to shepherd us to discussions, Tony.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We're gonna take we'll open up the rooms and get the discussion going. If anybody needs to take a break, the discussion will be happening, right? Get going in 5 minutes.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll
if anybody needs to take a rest or anything. Hey there, Eric, thank you so much for that. That was such a wonderful and thoughtful way to end this main event. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
That should be it. Okay, as I mentioned, we are wrapping up this event, and we do still have one more event upcoming, and accessibility events in general are something we plan to keep doing. So we do have a feedback survey. I can throw the link in the chat when I'm not sharing it after, but it's also linked in the notes. So if you have any thoughts on this, I believe it's just 5 questions checking, how was the audio? What were your expectations? But any feedback is welcome here, especially if you had trouble accessing something. That would be really good to know. We rely on that feedback to make these events more accessible. So I will link that afterwards. I also mentioned, there are upcoming events. So next week, March 19th, Saturday, same place, we're going to be having a sprint where we're auditing Jupyter interfaces as a group and kind of collaborating on that, give you some tools for how you can audit, whether that's auditing your own work, you want to get good at reviewing other people's work, you want to get better at understanding what the expectations are. Those are all good reasons to come to this event. It's open, it's at the same time, once again, public and free. So I would be so excited to see some returning faces, or bring your friends, We definitely have space there. Larger than that, we also have monthly Jupyter community calls. These are not exclusively accessibility focused, but they're a great place to start getting engaged with the community if you haven't done this before, or if you've been around Jupyter and you just didn't know. I meet a lot of different people in community calls, and they all have really different projects. It's a pretty awesome call. That'll be on March 29th, and I can link the community call calendar event after, also once I get back to chat. Finally, I mentioned at the beginning, we would love to get you more involved with Jupyter if you aren't already. So first, yes, community calls are a great place to kind of get that overview, see what's going on there. If you're looking specifically for accessibility work, though, you can start on the Jupyter Discourse. That's our non-code-based forum. They have an accessibility tag on there. We also have a GitHub repository, Jupyter/accessibility. That is kind of our cross-project coordination. So from there, you can find, oh, I want to work on this Jupyter project or this, just kind of by starting there. These are links that are in the notes document already. We also have Jupyter Lab accessibility meetings. So even though it's explicitly for the Jupyter Lab interface, we have people coming from across projects, and we're happy to discuss whatever. It's mostly named Jupyter Lab just because those were the people who were interested when it was starting. But a lot of the problems are shared throughout the project, and so we're able to do a lot of different work there. There's awesome people at that meeting. That one's really fun. And finally, big thank yous. I know we've said thank you a lot, but if there's anything I'm going to say too much of, I think thank you is a good one to overdo. So first, I want to thank Eric for speaking, I'm so grateful that we've been able to get some really awesome speakers with really different perspectives. That's important furthering our community's knowledge, and just understanding that there is not a single way to be doing accessibility, right, or to be working on it. I also want to thank the event team, especially Tony and Tanya, who were here with me and in the background, helping run things, helping us get to this point at all. It's been a long adventure, and we're all really happy to present this event to you. Also, thanks to the Jupyter Community Building Committee. That's a formal group that backs up these events, and they have Jupyter Community Workshops sponsors. In this case, Bloomberg and AWS help us pay for speakers and having a place for this event to happen. We also want to thank NumFocus because they are kind of our mediator for all this as well. And of course, thanks to the team that wrote this event proposal. I was not a part of it. I've just been fortunate to pick it up later on. And I'm really grateful that they wrote this and helped get this process started. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do these events today. So thank you to that entire team as well. And with that, be free. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for taking the time to attend this. I hope to find you either at next week's event or in future Jupyter Orbit. Thank you. Thank you.